Hello and welcome. My name is Alan, and this is more of the Martin Luther King Jr. Testament of Hope speeches and writings. This very well may be the last chapter, so let's hop it, or last episode of this particular book. So let's hop into it. Because Dr. King must, this is Rabbi Gendler talking. Because Dr. King must still meet tonight, at least briefly, with certain men from a particular areas in the country, and because Reverend Young must also meet with some men from the Washington area immediately after this session, regretfully, we have time for only one more question. Although Dr. King is probably a bit wary, and it is even conceivable that some of you are. I must say, I very much regret that we haven't more time to pick up some of your supplementary questions. Yet we have time, really, for only one last question, and I should imagine that, knowing the mood of the rabbinical assembly, the final questions have been asked in these kinds of terms, Dr. King. One is, what can we best do as rabbis to further the rights and equal status of our colored brethren? Another is, what specific role do you think we as rabbis can play in this current civil rights struggle? What role do you see for our congregations? How can all of us who are concerned participate with you on the goal of social justice? Dr. King, thank you very much for raising this, because I do think that there is a good note. That is a good note to end on, and I should hope that somehow we can get some real support, not only for the overall struggle, but for the innumerable the immediate campaign ahead in the city of Washington. Let me say that we have failed to say something to America enough. I'm very happy that the Kerner Commission has had the courage to say it. However difficult it is to hear, however shocking it is to hear, we've got to face the fact that America is a racist country. We have got to face the fact that racism still occupies the throne of our nation. I don't think we will ultimately solve the problem of racial injustice until this is recognized and until that this is worked on. Racism is the myth of an inferior race, of an inferior people. And I think religious institutions, more than any other institutions in society, must really deal with racism. Certainly, we all have a responsibility. The federal government, the local governments, our educational institutions, but the religious community, being the chief moral guardian of the overall community, should really take the primary responsibility in dealing with this problem of racism, which is largely attitudinal. So I see one specific job in the educational realm: destroying the myths and the half truths that have constantly been disseminated about Negroes all over the country, and which led to many of these racist attitudes, getting rid once and for all of the notion of white supremacy. I think also I might say concerning the Washington campaign that there is a need to interpret what we are about or will be about in Washington, because the press has gone out of its way in many instances to misinterpret what we will be doing in Washington. There is a need to interpret to all of those who worship in our congregations what poor people face in this nation, and to interpret the critical nature of the problem. We are dealing with the problem of poverty. We must be sure that the people of our country will see this as a matter of justice. The worst thing, the next thing that I would like to mention is something very practical, and yet we have to mention it if we are going to have movements. We are going to bring in the beginning about 3,000 people to Washington from 15 various communities. They are going to be poor people, mainly members or unemployed people. Some of who are too old to work, some who are too young to work, and some who are too physically disabled to work, some who are able to work but can't get jobs. They are going to be coming to Washington to bring their problems, to bring their burdens to the seat of the government and to demand that the government do something about it. Being poor, they certainly don't have any money. I was in Marks, Mississippi the other day, and I found myself weeping before I knew it. I met boys and girls in the hundreds who didn't have any shoes to wear, who didn't have any food to eat in terms of 3 square meals a day. And I met their parents, many of whom don't even have jobs. But not only do they not have jobs, they are not getting an income. Some of them aren't on any kind of welfare, and I literally cried when I heard men and women saying that they were unable to get any food to feed their children. We decided that we are going to try to bring this whole community to Washington from Marks, Mississippi. They didn't have anything anyway. They didn't have anything to lose. And we decided that we are going to try to bring them right up to Washington, where we are going to have our Freedom School. There we are going to have all the things that we have outlined and that we don't have time to go into now. But in order to bring them to Washington, it is going to take money. They'll have to feed, they'll have to fed after they get to Washington, and we would hope that those who are so inclined, those who have a compassion for the least of these God's children, will aid us financially. Some will be walking and some will be using church houses to get them from point to point. Some will be coming up on mule train. We're going to have a mule train coming from Mississippi, connecting with Alabama, Georgia, going right on up, and in order to carry that out, you can see that financial aid will be greatly needed. But not only that, we need bodies to bring about the pressure that I have mentioned to get Congress and the nation moving in the right direction. The stronger the number, the greater the movement will be. We will need some people working in supportive roles, lobbying in Washington, talking about with the congressmen, talking with the various departments of government, and we will need some time to march with uh, us as we demonstrate in the city of Washington. Some have already done this, like Rabbi Gendler and others. When we first met him, and it was in Albany, Georgia, and there, along with other rabbis and Protestant clergymen and Catholic clergymen, we developed a movement. And there have been others, as I said earlier, Rabbi Herschel in Selma and other movements. The more of this kind of participation that we can get, the more helpful it will be. For after we get the 3,000 people in Washington, we want the non-poor to come in a supportive role. Then on June the 15th, we want to have a massive march on Washington. You see, the 3,000 are going to stay in Washington at least 60 days or however long we feel it is necessary. But we want to provide an opportunity once more for thousands, hundreds of thousands of people to come to Washington, reminiscent of the March of 1963. We endorse the demands of the poor people who have been here all of the weeks trying to get Congress to move. We would hope that as many people in your congregations as you can find will come to Washington on June the 15th. You can see that it is a tremendous logistics problem, and it means real organization, which we are getting into. We would hope that all of our friends will go out of their way to make that a big day. Indeed, the largest march that has taken place in the city of Washington. These are some of the things that can be done. I'm sure I've missed some, but these are the ones you are that are on my mind right now, and I believe that this kind of support would bring new hope to those who are now in very despairing conditions. I still believe that with this kind of coalition of conscience, we will be able to get something moving again in America, something that is so desperately needed. Rabbi Gendler. I think that all of us, Dr. King, recall the words of Professor Herschel at the beginning of this evening. He spoke of the word, the vision of the way that you provide. We certainly have heard words of eloquence, words which at the same time were very much to the point. And through these, I think that we have the opportunity now to share more fully in your vision. As for the way, it is eminently clear that the paths you tread are peaceful ones leading to the greater peace. You may be sure that not only have we heard your words, and not only do we share your vision, but many of us will take advantage of the privilege of accompanying you in further steps on the path that all of us must tread. Thank you, Dr. King. And that's the end of that piece. And the rest seems to be bibliography, index. So yeah, that's the last of the book. So we have finished A Testament of Hope, the collection of the speeches and writings of Dr. Martin Luther King. Well, it says the essential writings and speeches, but yeah, it gives many of his um, writings and speeches that he had and interviews. But yeah, it's a pretty thick book, but we got through it. 675. It ends in the index at page 702. But yeah. And he pushes educational institutions to help fight racism too. I bring this up because educational institutions like colleges and stuff, some of them were teaching CRT. CRT does not get taught in grade school or high school. In a college or university setting, yes, because it fights against racism because it's called critical race theory. And, you know, tries to give you the straight information of what happened after slavery, maybe even during slavery. I've tried to be as honest with y'all as I can. You know, and like I said, it's the same here. I try to be honest with you in other videos. But I think that will be it for this series. As always, educate thyself, think, read, study, learn. Someone tries to tell you something you have trouble believing, ask them to cite their sources. I'll see you all in the next video I post. Until then, later.